What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by comic artist Shane Connery Volk. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
You are the artist behind the hit book from Mad Cave Studios right now, Nottingham. That book is on fire.
It's killing it. What a weird thing to hear. Like, I didn't think my first book was going to have the words hit even near it. So, very cool.
Yeah, it is. And then we're going to hop into that book. We're going to talk about it because, like you said, it's your first book and all of these things. But before we do any of that, I always like to just find out, how did you get into comics? Like, have you enjoyed comics? Is this a newer thing? Is this something you did growing up?
I was into comics as a kid. I grew up on a farm, so we didn't have access to a lot of comics. So I think when I turned probably around 12 and I found a comic shop in the city near us, every time we went in, I, of course, begged my parents to drop me off there for an hour.
Yeah.
So I got into it then, and I've been a musician professionally for 20 years. So I kind of went from doing being really into comics to going full on into music in my early 20s. Always keeping up my art to some degree, but it was only in the last probably 2 years that I really was like, okay, I always knew at some point I wanted to do comic art, or at least give it a real solid go. So about 2 years ago, I said, well, it's time to start taking it seriously and do all the things I was scared to do and learn. So yeah, it's been a lifelong thing, but only recently have I really dug into it.
So, well, you mentioned that you've been doing music for the past 20 some years
Yeah.
with your band. It was One Bad Son, right?
One Bad Son. Yeah, you bet.
And so is that something like when you guys would go touring, would you like have to make stops off at comic book shops when you could, or like find time to still get some reading in?
Oh man, I wish there was time on tour to do any of that. Usually it's van, drive for 15 hours, go to a radio station, hit an interview, do all your setup, and
Yeah.
maybe get some food and 5 minutes nap, and then play, and then come home at 4 or 5 a.m. Hotel, back in the van. So I always tell people, like, we did a big US tour a few years back, and they're like, oh, how was New York? I'm like, I saw back alleys in my van, and that's about it, in clubs. So
Yeah.
I wish, man, I wish there was time to stop off in every city.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it seems like it's a grind for sure.
It's full
Um,
on.
so you kind of, how did you make that kind of transition a little bit of like, you know what, I really want to pursue like art, what, like, for your comic art? Because I know you said, you kind of said like, I just got to do this. What was kind of the kick for you to say, well, I'm going to do this and get connected with a comic book?
Well, I think, the band has done and is still doing really well. Of course, COVID has shut down any
Right.
live. So we've had our first break in, I think, 16 years of touring. So shortly before that, as we were doing better, and there was a little more time between tours to start to get into stuff, I kind of realized, as I said before, I always wanted to do comic art. At some point, I was like, you're nice thing with comic art is you can do it at any age. Okay, now is that time. So if you're going to do it, do it. Like a lot of artists, I think I've always been a doodler.
Yeah.
Designed a lot of the One Bad Son merch, and that was always cool to keep my skill up there. But I knew there was going to be these massive hurdles that and like this horrible learning curve that's going to go from, like, the classic doodler to an actual artist, comic artist. So with a lot of encouragement from my wife, it was like, okay, now's the time. Let's dig in. Let's do it for real, and whatever that's going to mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just decided, because now with the technology, I mean, I work traditionally and digitally. I just got an iPad that I can take, so that when music starts back up, I can draw from the road. And
Yeah.
so it's a little more mobile now. And that was always my plan, was to be able to do comic art and music as
Yeah.
much at the same time as humanly possible, while still getting some sleep in here and
A little bit, when you can.
there. Yeah.
So you made the switch of like, I want to start to make that attempt to start to find art and start to do comic art in your career now alongside doing music. So
Yeah.
how did you get connected with Mad Cave?
Honestly, it was sort of like the craziest random thing. I was getting married and our wedding was coming up, and I think like it was 2 weeks. And so there was a lot going on, but I don't know how randomly. I think because I'd been working on my skill and I'm like, okay, it's time to just start getting rejected by a bunch of people, like looking for places to submit. And then I came across the Mad Cave contest, like their art writing contest. And I was thinking to myself, because it was closing in 2 weeks. I think the deadline's beginning of September. And I thought to myself, well, nah, do it next year. Like you need better skill. But then my wife, I mean, she's the best. She's like, do it. Like, do it now. And so I did. I came up with a little, I think they were asking for like a 4 or 5 page art sample,
Yeah.
like story based on some of their characters. And so I did that, kind of blew through it, which was great because I didn't overthink it, didn't have time to overthink it. It was like, hey, great. It's the best I got right now. We went and got married, and that was awesome. All of a sudden, 2 months later, I got an email saying, "Hey, you won." Um,
That's so cool.
and then panic set in. So um, that's how I got my shot. Mad Cave. What a crazy thing that they do to
Right.
try to find new writers and new artists. I mean, that's just not a thing that happens anymore.
Yeah.
So good on
Well,
them. It's incredible.
and I had David on the show about a month before Nottingham actually came out. And
Okay.
he was talking about how, like, he wrote. So do they just, is that typical? Do they pair up the winner art, winner from the art and a winner from the writer to do their first book together?
Well, at least in the year, so that was 2019
Okay.
that I won the contest there. And so from my perspective, I said, I'll draw anything, whatever you want, you know. So from my perspective, they just said at some point, because my art is a bit darker, there's a lot of, I use a lot of blacks, and
Yeah.
just the style of it. They said, how do you feel about a noir? And I said, great, that sounds good. I literally they didn't give me a story or anything. So I started looking at and getting a bunch of reference for like cities in the 1930s, and just trying to wrap my head around, because I'm thinking noir, right? And
Right.
then
Yeah.
they said, what about not what about a Robin Hood story? I'm like, well, okay. I gotta take my reference from cities to forests. But so I was stoked about that, about the medieval stuff.
Yeah. The back alleys from touring aren't going to help you now with Nottingham.
You'd be surprised, man. Some of the places I've played look a lot like some of the places in Nottingham.
I think that's got to be just like you said, like such a wild experience of like, oh, we're going to do a noir book. And then you're like, cool, but it's Robin Hood.
Yeah. So I just thought, all right, I'm just gonna wait till they tell me what this thing is. And what a cool pitch. I mean, David's
Yeah.
story was incredible. I was pretty much, because when they said Robin Hood, I was like, okay, is this, I love that lore. I'm actually a big history buff, and
Yeah.
I love the time period. But David's story was so different, obviously, with the flipped, um,
Right.
you know, uh, the sheriff's not exactly the good guy, but he's the main character.
Right.
And that got me right away, and his kind of attention to some historical detail and all that. And I was like, okay, I'm in. This is awesome.
That's,
So
that's so cool for sure. Like, yeah, because I remember talking with David and he was mentioning how like it's such a unique idea, but it seems like it's one that should have happened so long ago, like that it's so surprising it hadn't.
well, and it's funny because all the best ideas are like that.
Yeah.
And when you come up with an idea like that, you think, oh, okay, well, this is done. And you start looking around for this having already happened. But you're right. It seemed the simplest ideas are usually the hardest ones to stumble on, because
Right.
with Robin Hood, I think you just kind of, even if you're going to make like a gritty new telling of Robin Hood, while he's still got to be the hero, right? Like he still
Yeah.
has to be, it's still, and just to make the flip of like, what's it look like from the sheriff's point of view? I mean, he's just a person in charge of, I mean, of course he's like, the cop angle was super cool, but he
Yeah.
is, even in any of the tellings of Robin Hood, you're like, well, who is this guy? He's just an asshole going around shaking people down for their taxes. I mean, he's got to have some story.
Yeah.
And I always like any kind of, whether it's like flipped like this or not, I like a look at the characters who um, you wouldn't normally think are going to be
Yeah.
the that wouldn't be interesting, but
Yeah.
everybody's got a story. So yeah, it was brilliant. David did a brilliant job.
So let's talk about your art style a little bit, because it definitely is a unique art style, I think, that we've seen in comic book form a lot. And I'm super captivated by it because I think it translates so well with David's writing. So where does your art style, at least for this book, kind of come from?
Well, I appreciate the kind words, man. Actually, I got a bunch of pictures here. It's messy, we'll say that.
That's so
These are
cool.
just
Yeah.
like bunch of sketches and stuff. But it's, it's funny. I grew up with a lot of like image stuff, like early 90s image
Yeah.
stuff, Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and all that. And I loved that stuff and emulated it so hard. And then, of course, music kind of came in. And then when I came back to comics, I started discovering all this new to me, stuff like Jock and artists like Sean Gordon Murphy and
Yep.
Jason Sean Alexander. That and it just started to speak to me. I think when I was 12 and I first saw Mike Mignola stuff, I thought it was just absolute garbage, right? Because you're like, oh, I want all the lines, I
Yeah.
want like all the crazy stuff. And then when I came back to it, I mean, I can't get enough of Mike Mignola's stuff. I love it. So I just kind of I knew that I didn't have a style yet. Even when Nottingham started, I didn't really know what the style was. And I decided I was gravitating towards that kind of darker, really ink heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And I sort of just decided, okay, you didn't overthink it when you submitted to this thing. So whatever your style is going to be, instead of trying to push it one way or the other, I mean, you're always going to carry your influences with you, but I just thought, let it be what it is and let it become what it's going to become. And as the books progress, you'll see kind of like a bit of a shift in my style.
Okay.
Also, I get better at drawing stuff, which helps. Um, but I just, I kind of got to the point where I stopped overthinking, stopped kind of really, I mean, especially if you're working digitally, which I do most of the interiors, you
Okay.
can get really detailed oriented and really like, oh, this hand isn't quite right. And you can spend forever. And because it's a deadline business, you've got to find this line of like, not good enough in a bad way, but look, that's what you got. You did your best. You got to move on to the next
Yeah.
page. So yeah, my style has kind of developed out of just letting go, more letting go than really trying to control it. And
Yeah.
luckily, people have responded really well to it. And because I think people like to see something a bit different, and I'd rather be, my singing voice is kind of the same. People either love it or hate it, which is great. I don't
Yeah.
want people to be lukewarm water on it. So, and I'm cool with my art style being the same, right? If people hate it, great, because that means people will also love it. If people are like, it's good.
Yeah. Huh.
It doesn't, yeah, you're kind of like, well, okay, that's great. Then I'm just one of a million people and not really standing out, right?
That sounds like that's such a cool perspective to have. Like you said, like with your singing voice of you're either gonna like it or you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it, because and the same within your art of, you know, that means if you have such strong opinions of people loving it or hating it, it means that it stands out. That, like
Yep.
you said, it's different, it's unique enough, and people are either gonna go, I love this, or they're gonna go, I don't like that art.
Yeah. And honestly, it's never easy to have somebody rip your art apart, whether it's
Right.
music or anything, or your writing, but you realize that if you're doing something that hits a nerve with people, good or bad, that's what art is supposed to be. I
Yeah.
mean, you got to understand that you're never going to please everybody ever. I mean, it's just not possible. So I'd rather polarize people and have nobody in the middle and just have people who love it or hate it. Um, I've often joked about in the band in OBS, the boys and I laugh about how we knew we were starting to get successful when the hate mail and like people started to troll us online, because now people care. You
Right.
realize you've at least made enough noise that some people are absolutely hating it. And you're like, yep, that's because all the biggest bands, look at how much heat bands like Metallica have taken. And I know I've heard a lot of people like me with Mike Mignola stuff. When I was a kid, I'm like, this sucks. I can't stand it. Now I
Yeah.
love it. I was never lukewarm on it though.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. You know, I've talked with people, you know, YouTubers who have talked about like when they get thumbs down on videos or things like this. And it's like, and one of them, Jem Mint, he always is like, well, dude, look, Google your favorite, you know, song, like the best song of your favorite artist of all time. They're like, look how many thumbs down it has. Like, people are gonna be negative no matter what. Like, and I'm like,
Absolutely.
it's gonna be a cool take, and that means like, hey, you know, you got your fans, you got your support, and all of that, and that's cool.
Yeah, and that's how you really find that niche, right? And you're going to
Yeah.
find people that want you for their books. And I mean, the danger is you get pigeonholed. I mean, I love this series, and I kind of like horror stuff and darker stuff. But I
Okay.
mean, I'd love to stretch my legs, which I'm getting some more opportunities now to do lighter stuff and see how my style translates there.
Yeah.
So that you're not just hitting your comfort zone for the next 30, 40 years,
Right.
you know?
So what was it like then when you, because Nottingham you said is your first book, what was it
Yep.
like when you first got your copy of Nottingham in your hand to read, like something you created some in a form that like you read as a kid, like they're like, and now I'm getting to hold a comic book that I helped create. Like,
Well, it's a
how
great
was it?
question. That's a great question. It was awesome. You know, when the band first kind of broke out and we had a song on the radio was like especially when we heard it in a city that we didn't come from, it was that same feeling of it's surreal. Like
Yeah.
it's like you said. I mean, I went to comic stores when I was a kid, comic shops, and just oogled at all of this crazy art and, dreamt about doing that. And then when you finally see it, it's kind of indescribable. It's
Yeah.
so, because you think, well, if I ever get here, wow, to have a book in a store, but what is that even going to look like? I don't know. Did I ever imagine my art would look like it does now when I was 12? No. So, but it was really cool. And I have a thing going back to the band, which is I would always buy our albums, and I will always buy an issue of, like, every issue that comes out. I just feel like there's just something about paying money for your own art feels kind of cool. You're like,
Yeah.
I can actually go to a store and buy this. And it just feels like, I don't know. It's always been a bit of a good luck charm for me.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
well, it works. But the biggest issue now is trying to go to a store and find your book.
I know. I've been shut out a couple times.
I mean, it's funny, like not funny, but like just so cool to see like how it is just blown up of you know, I had it on my pull list because I talked to Dave. I'm like, this sounds like a really cool book. And you know, I know he was hitting the, you know, the media market really fast, or you know, a couple months before. And I'm like, how did people sleep on this? Because now I was like, it was everywhere. And it's got to be cool to get such a strong reception, I think, of fans loving it.
It is. I mean, as much as you're prepared, I mean, I was prepared for people to hate it, because I think
Yeah.
just as a human being, you're kind of like, hey, my first go, whatever, there's going to be more opportunities, and however it goes, it's going to go. But to have such positive reaction, and especially that first cover, I think people really loved. And I again can't thank Mad Cave enough for letting me try doing covers, because I said, look, I would absolutely, I'll take whatever opportunity, but I would love a stab at the first, no pun intended, the first cover. And I just thought that image was so cool, and like those
Yeah.
masks that David came up with are just really iconic. And I'm like, if a bloody mask with just a black background and lots of blood doesn't draw you in, nothing's gonna,
Yeah. It's not going to be the book for you.
But the
So,
response has been crazy, man.
yeah.
I can't even, I never predicted it. And the one person in this world that was ahead of the game is my mother. She, because she's my mom, and she put in all these, or she's like, every book that comes in, I'll take them. So there's books I haven't been able to get that she has. So luckily, I'm like, I know one person in the world that will let me have one of my books.
you gotta love the moms, because
Oh,
like,
the support. I love it. It's awesome. Now
it's
she's sitting on a bit of a gold mine, so that's good for her too.
yeah. She's gonna like, oh, now I need to figure out how to eBay. Yeah, it is so unique and interesting to see just like how, you know, how much it just takes off and like what hits and what resonates with people. And I think it's
And you
just,
never know, right?
you
Yeah.
don't. And I think it's a testament to what you guys have created here with Nottingham. Um, how does it kind of the collaboration between you and David work with like the design? Like, I know you said like with kind of the mask he came up with, did he kind of like say like, this is what I'm envisioning, and like, and then you said, here, let me run with it? Or how's that process for you guys?
Yeah, it was a lot like that. I mean, because it was both our first times doing a book and very unsure of how, I mean, I had an idea how the process goes, but you never know, especially being teamed up with somebody that you've never met, never even talked to. I just got the scripts, and he had sent over kind of character breakdowns with some different photographs, as like, maybe you can kind of look like this
Yeah.
person. And the masks, he was like, yeah, a bit of it was this Anglo-Saxon mask from history, along with like the Guy Fawkes mask from, you know, V for Vendetta, that sort of thing. And
Yep.
so he had given me that stuff and then just said, go to it. And then I sent back what I came up with, and he loved it. Um, it was really organic,
Yeah.
which was cool. There wasn't a lot of back and forth of like, he wasn't like, oh no, this guy's got to look like this or that. He really liked what I was doing, and the ideas he had were awesome to work off of. So it was a very like, yeah, very organic, which I don't think is probably the case most of the time. Um, but it was just a process of the two of us doing the best we could.
Yeah.
And somehow there was just, you know, you kind of get lightning in a bottle sometimes with people, especially with collaborations. And the rest of the team was awesome. When Luca came on, and Joe Met on the letters, and our like Brian Hawkins editing, and Chris Fernandez also was doing editing too. Like the whole
Yeah.
team was great. And it was kind of
Yeah.
this thing that there was never, I never had this feeling of, oh man, like this person is really killing us. Like just everybody that kind of got added to the team was the same thing, and everyone was having fun and everyone was chill, and they were all super supportive and loving where the story was going. So it was as fun to do as to read, which is not always the case in art. So
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was just looking at that because I was like, I thought you said Brian Hawkins as the editor. I'm like, wait, he writes comic books too?
yeah, Brian does it all. He does almost everything and works nonstop. So
Because I had him on my show talking about his book Black Cotton, and so
yeah,
then when I was like, wait, oh yeah, he's an editor too.
yeah, yeah. So
Yes, heck of a team then. I mean, and it's got to be cool as a whole team coming together of just seeing it, you know, the reception and everything like that. So
yeah,
is this first arc, is it 5 issues or
five.
5?
Yeah,
Okay.
5 issues. So
Okay.
2, I think whenever this comes out, there'll be 2 to go.
Okay.
And it heats up. It gets hot. Issue 4 was one of the most challenging, and maybe, I don't know, I have favorite things about each issue, but that one was cool. There's my favorite page. I'll say this, my favorite page that I did in the entire series is in book 4. So
Nice. I mean, I expect then that I'm going to be like reading the book the whole time going, all right, which one is it? Which one is it?
I think you'll know.
And then when
honestly,
I know, I'll be like, I'll message you. I'm like, oh my gosh.
yeah. You know what? When you see the book, message me. I guarantee you'll guess which is my favorite.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, I know you are a super busy, you know, working on this book and with your band and things like that. But so I hesitate to even ask, but do you have anything else going on or anything else that you're kind of working on?
Well, art wise, there's lots right now. There's stuff I can't really talk about, and
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to get in trouble. So there's been some art stuff, tons of commissions and that sort of thing, which has been really cool, and just trying to keep up with some of that before the next project that I do really kicks off, and I'm just back in a cave doing art every day.
Yeah.
Besides that, yeah, I mean, been talking to the band a bit, and I've got some of my own solo music that I'm doing as well. I'm a modern artist. There's no stopping. You gotta, you know, you stop to sleep and eat every now and then. But so a lot of irons in the fire, and honestly, with COVID now finally, I mean, I'm hesitant to say even coming to the end, but there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So
Yes.
it's so nice to be able to talk to guys, like I said, chatting with the band and just saying, okay, what might things look like now when we come back? That's exciting. I
Yeah.
mean, I am so looking forward to going to conventions and finally meeting some people face to face and meeting fans and stuff too. So I know that there's going to be some stuff. I think New
Yeah.
York Comic Con is happening this year.
Yeah, there's a couple. I know Lexington Comic Con is happening,
Okay.
and so there are, and like that's been the hardest thing about this last year. Like the two things my wife and I do is we go to Comic Cons together and we go to outdoor music festivals together. And
Oh,
so
dude.
like well, it's like both shut down and we're just like, what do we do? So
Trust me,
it's like,
this is the first year I didn't play festivals in 20 years. And it was hard.
yeah,
You miss, not only do you miss the music, but it's like you miss, and I'm sure, because it's been a long time since I've been to a convention just as a fan. So to go to them as somebody in like the industry now is going to be so cool, and hard to miss out on that, because that's the thing you miss, is just being around people. It's
yeah.
not just the thing you're doing, but it's everybody's there for the same reason, and they just want to celebrate the things that they love. And man, I can't wait till that comes back.
It's it's not what you said is so true. Like it's something that we all love. Like you go to a convention, you're there with your people. Like,
Yeah.
people outside us are like, oh, you guys are nerds for going to Comic Con. They're like, yeah, but it's super fun. And these are our people. And the same thing, I think, is the same experience that you get that high you get at a concert. You're going to see people that with other people who like who you like and like what you
Yeah.
like. And it's just, man, I've
Well,
missed it. So
oh man, so much. And especially in a world right now with just the negativity you see on
Yeah.
all over the internet. The thing that I miss, because that's kind of all we've had, is people are complaining about this and that and politics and all the stuff. The thing I miss so much about festivals and shows and conventions is just exactly what you said. We're all here for this reason. We're all here because we love comic books. We love the whole thing, and we want to talk to people and see costumes, and just I love that. I miss people coming together to do something as opposed to fighting with each other. And I can't wait till it comes back. And there's a chance I might, depending if it's late enough in the year, I might pop down to a couple down in the US. So
nice.
We'll see.
Definitely that'd be exciting to see. And then hopefully you guys do a US tour again so we can get you out.
I'd love it.
But well, Shane, thank you so much for just taking some time to talk about comics, talk about music, and your art, because it's crazy. One last question I got to ask you before I let you go. I was just thinking, you were talking about your music a little bit. Do you write for your music, or do you guys kind of do it as a band?
It's collaborative.
Okay.
Yeah. We all write together, and and that was a big thing. I'm actually very naturally a control freak, and I think David is a little bit too. So I've learned through music. I mean, I've learned so much. I've learned so many life lessons being in a band, and just it's hard for me to let go. But it was all the things I went through in the band to get to where the band is right now has helped so much in comic art, because I'm like, look, you're the artist. I'll do the art and I will do my best, and I can let go of other things. David's the writer, let him do the writing and I'll do the art. And it's just the collaboration of it has been awesome. Yeah. And it's kind of like the more I've let go, I think the more I've enjoyed music and art.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's been a constant process of like letting go, try to shelve your ego. Not the easiest thing, but
that's what kind of just made me think of it. I was like, I wonder if he writes his own songs. Does that mean, is there a desire someday to write your own book then too, that you are?
100%.
Okay. So there is that desire then to do that someday of like,
yeah, 100%. That's why I'm doing some solo music. I mean, I've written all the lyrics and we've kind of take care of our own instruments and don't step on each other's toes, but I've started to let go of that a bit more too. But I'll say this, there's room for everything. I'm stoked to write my own book, draw it, like do it all.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place for that, because it's when you come out of collaboration, it's sort of nice to be like, these are the characters. This is what they do. This is what it is. If it bombs, it's all on me.
Yeah.
But I think after you do that too much, you start to miss getting other people's ideas, and you realize music's the same way. I mean, I love writing in the band. It's cool to write my own songs, because then you're not, you're just like, this is the song, this is how it's going to be done.
Yeah.
But then you miss the collaboration. You miss, like, yeah, sometimes you fight in a what do you want to call it? Like, you fight in like that artistic way where, like, I
Right.
see it this way, I see it this way. And that's usually where all the best ideas come out of,
Yeah.
and then you start to miss that. So I think in both careers, I think I'm always going to bounce between both. Like, I
Gotcha.
love working with people. Sometimes it's fun to just tune it all out, do it yourself, and then go back to working with people. So I think that's kind of where I'd like to go anyway.
Nice. Awesome. Well, again, just thank you so much for taking some time to talk about comics and music with me.
Appreciate
If
it.
people want to follow with all the things that you are doing, what's the best way for them to kind of stay up to date with you?
Uh, Twitter and Instagram are kind of the
Okay.
two that I'm mostly on. My website, shaneconneryvolk.com. And then that links out everywhere. And if you want to check out the band, onebadson.com, you can just Google
Nice.
that as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And all the links that you just said are going to be in the description of this video below. So if
awesome.
you're tuning in, click on the links, Twitter and to the band's page and stuff like that. So
Appreciate it.
thank you again. Congrats on the success of Nottingham. I wish you guys the best moving forward.
I really appreciate it. I
So,
can't wait to chat with you after the books are all out, and then
yes.
you can let me know what you think about the what can I call it? Is it a finale? Who knows?
Who knows? But after issue, let's just say we'll talk after issue 5.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe we'll do maybe we'll set up a time. We'll fill our glasses with a little bit of whiskey
I'd love
and
that.
have a little conversation online about the series. So
I would absolutely love that, man. Anytime.
awesome. Well, thanks again. With that being said, if you're still watching, make sure you guys leave comments on the video. Let us know what you like about Nottingham and everything. Hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.